When the sun goes down, you flip a switch. The room fills with light, and you don't even think about it. It's one of those small things we do every day without realizing how extraordinary it really is. But for almost all of human history, that simple switch didn't exist. When the sun disappeared below the horizon, darkness took over the world. Not the kind of darkness we know today with streetlights, cars, and glowing phone screens. Real darkness. The kind where you couldn't even see your own hand in front of your face. For hundreds of thousands of years, every one of your ancestors spent nearly half of their lives in that darkness. For most of that time, they didn't even have candles or oil lamps. They had only the stars above them, the moon when it appeared, and whatever fire they could keep burning through the night. So what did they actually do during all those long hours? The answer changes the way we think about sleep, storytelling, human culture, and even ourselves. And the story begins with one of humanity's greatest discoveries. Fire. The earliest strong evidence that humans controlled fire comes from Wonderwork Cave in South Africa, dating back almost 1 million years. Most people think fire simply kept our ancestors warm. But it did much more than that. Fire completely changed the human day. Before humans learned to control fire, they lived much like every other primate. As soon as the sun went down, they climbed into trees or found safe places to hide. Because moving through the darkness meant risking your life. Our eyes are not built for seeing at night. The predators hunting us, leopards, hyenas, wolves, and big cats, could see far better than we could. Once darkness arrived, humans were at a huge disadvantage. Then everything changed. A campfire created a small circle of safety. The light and smoke kept many predators away. Inside that glowing circle, families could finally relax. Outside it, danger still waited. Anthropologists studying modern hunter-gatherer groups have found that people who wander away from the fire after dark face a much higher risk of being attacked by predators. Fire didn't just protect people. It gave them something they had never experienced before. More time. Before fire, the useful part of the day ended at sunset. After fire, humans suddenly had extra hours every evening. Those extra hours may not sound important, but over thousands of generations, they changed our species forever. Anthropologist Polly Wiesner studied conversations among the Jew/Hoansi Bushmen of the Kalahari Desert, one of the few societies that still live in a way similar to our ancient ancestors. What she found was fascinating. During the day, most conversations were about survival. Who was hunting? Where food could be found? Which plants were ready to collect? Who would travel where? The daytime was all about work. But after sunset, something completely different happened. As families gathered around the fire, practical conversations almost disappeared. Instead, people began telling stories. Stories about heroes. Stories about distant lands. Stories explaining the stars, animals, spirits, and the beginning of the world. People laughed together. Children listened carefully. Knowledge was passed from one generation to the next. Wiesner believed that these nighttime conversations were where human culture truly began. The campfire became humanity's first classroom. Its first theater. Its first place of worship. It was around the fire that humans learned to imagine things beyond what they could see. In many ways, the campfire is where we became human. But the night wasn't only about stories. It was also about sleep. And surprisingly, our ancestors probably didn't sleep the way we do today. Historian Roger A. Kirch spent years studying old diaries, letters, medical books, court records, prayer books, and ancient writings. Again and again, he found people talking about something called first sleep and second sleep. At first, historians ignored these references because they assumed people had always slept through the night like we do now. But they were wrong. Before the industrial age, most people slept in two separate parts. They went to bed soon after sunset. Slept peacefully for several hours. Then they naturally woke up in the middle of the night. They stayed awake for a while before falling asleep again until morning. This wasn't considered unusual. It wasn't insomnia. It was simply normal human sleep. During this quiet time, people prayed. They reflected on their lives. They talked about dreams while they were still fresh. Some wrote letters. Some read. Others simply lay quietly in the darkness, thinking. Doctors even believed this peaceful period was one of the best times for deep thought because the world was completely silent. For centuries, people lived this way. Then modern science accidentally rediscovered it. Psychiatrist Thomas Ware conducted an experiment by removing artificial light from people's lives. Participants spent long nights in complete darkness, just as humans once did before electric lights existed. Nobody instructed them how to sleep. Nobody suggested changing their routine. Yet after only a few weeks, every participant naturally fell into the same pattern. Several hours of sleep. A peaceful period of wakefulness. Then several more hours of sleep before sunrise. It was as though an ancient program inside the human brain had quietly switched back on. Ware also measured their hormone levels during that middle period. The results were remarkable. Their brains produced unusually high levels of prolactin, a hormone linked with deep relaxation, meditation, and feelings of calm. Participants described the experience as peaceful, thoughtful, and almost spiritual. It wasn't simply being awake. It was a completely different state of consciousness. One that most people today never experience. So what changed? The answer is surprisingly simple. Light. As cities grew, people began lighting their streets. First came lanterns. Then cheaper candles. Then gas lamps. Finally came the electric light bulb. Within only a few generations, the natural light that humans had known for hundreds of thousands of years almost disappeared. Even the word curfew tells part of the story. It comes from the French phrase couvre-feu, meaning cover the fire. In medieval towns, bells rang every evening to remind people to cover or put out their fires. Not only to prevent accidents, but because the night was expected to remain dark. Darkness was normal. Night belonged to sleep. For much of history, walking outside after dark was considered suspicious. In some places, doing so without carrying a lantern was even against the law. People respected the night because they understood its dangers. Eventually, humanity conquered the darkness. We filled it with artificial light. And we celebrated it as progress. But in doing so, we may have lost something valuable. Today, most people remain surrounded by bright lights for many hours after sunset. Phones. Computers. Televisions. Streetlights. LED bulbs. All of them tell our brains that it's still daytime. Blue light suppresses melatonin, the hormone that prepares the body for sleep. Your brain doesn't know the difference between the sun and a bright screen. When your eyes see light late at night, your internal clock becomes confused. Melatonin is released later. Sleep becomes lighter. The body's natural rhythm begins to drift. Researchers have found that people who spend only 1 week camping without artificial light quickly return to a much more natural sleep schedule. Their bodies begin releasing melatonin close to sunset once again. In just a few days, ancient biological rhythms begin to return. Think about that. Hundreds of thousands of years of evolution are still inside you. They never disappeared. They're simply hidden beneath modern life. Perhaps we didn't just change when we sleep. Perhaps we erased an entire state of human consciousness. That peaceful period between first and second sleep, the quiet time for reflection, dreaming, and deep thought, has almost vanished from our lives. Instead, many people wake in the middle of the night and immediately assume something is wrong. But what if it isn't? What if waking for a short time isn't always a problem? What if your body is simply remembering the rhythm it evolved with over hundreds of thousands of years? For most of human history, our ancestors spent their evenings gathered around a fire, telling stories that shaped families, communities, and civilizations. They slept in two peaceful phases. They lived beneath skies so dark that the Milky Way wasn't a rare sight, it was simply the night sky. And during those quiet hours between first and second sleep, they reflected on their dreams, their lives, and the world they would wake up to in the morning. Today, with one simple flick of a switch, darkness disappears. We gained comfort. We gained convenience. But perhaps, without even noticing, we left behind a small piece of what it once meant to be human.